Hello.
Hello, Olivia.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
Good
And
afternoon.
Thank you so much for joining
Good
us.
afternoon.
Good afternoon, Leopold. Good afternoon, Yanko.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I will just briefly introduce you, and Yanko Shitisme will then run the panel. So thank you all for joining the Affordable Housing in Rwanda session. We have a very exciting panel for this morning with Yanko Shitisme, Business Development Director at Shelter Afrique, who's going to be the moderator of the session. And we have the pleasure and the privilege to have Lilian Ngozuwera, the Chief Operating Officer of Development Bank of Rwanda, joining us, with Pacific Tuyusme, the Acting Chief Investment Officer of the Rwanda Development Board, and Leopold Uwinawa, Head of Affordable Housing Planning and Development Department at the Rwanda Housing Authority. Thank you all so much for joining us. Yanko, over to you.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me and
Very well.
see me. Thank you. Good morning, Olivia, and thank you. Hello, Leopold. Good afternoon here from Nairobi. I know you are behind us a bit there. I obviously haven't met.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, I know Lillian. I don't know if I can't see her on the line though, but I can only see yourself, Leopold. But anyways, Leopold, I don't know if you got my questions that I had sent beforehand. Did you receive?
Yeah, I saw them.
Are you okay with them? Is there anything you want to? I mean, it's obviously you want to make it free flowing. So if there's any other things you want to add on top of that, you can always add. But are you generally okay with the questions?
Yeah, they're okay. They're okay. We can go with them.
Okay, no, that sounds good. And then I think we're just going to wait. Then I know there was a gentleman from RDB, Jean-Claude, who was also meant to join us. So I don't know if he's in yet, but I don't see. I think so far it's just, okay, Pacific is joining. Pacific, good afternoon here from Nairobi. How are you?
Hello, everyone.
Hello. So quick introduction. So my name is Yanko Chitsime. Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Pacific? Pacific? Okay. Pacific, can you hear me? Okay, Pacific is struggling a bit. So Pacific, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us? Or can you hear me at the moment? Pacific? Can you hear me? Okay, let's just wait for his issues. Okay. Pacific, can you hear me now? Okay. Pacific? They can't hear us. Let me just ask. Yeah, struggling. I know, and I know Lillian was meant to also join. Let me just make sure. But Leopold, you can still hear me, right? Leopold, can you hear me? Okay. Pacific, can you hear me? Pacific, they are asking that you leave the room.
I did. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. I could hear you before, but you couldn't hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. From your side, is Lillian also joining, or was it just be yourself?
It'll be me. We may have Jean-Claude joining us as well, but I'll just
Yes,
double check.
Jean. All right. Okay. All right. Olivier, I know he was there, then he's disappeared.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here, Uncle.
Yes. Yeah, Olivier.
Yeah.
So you'll let us know when it's time. I know we were supposed to.
You can start now. You can start now. I will just have to leave the session to allow the other speakers to come in because the number of speakers is limited. So I will just turn off my video and leave the panel and let you run and let the speakers have the panel.
Okay.
But you can start now. Thank you so much.
We'll start without further ado. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to this particular session. The title of the session is Affordable Housing in Rwanda. In terms of introduction, my name is Yanko Chitsime. Out here in Nairobi. I work for Shout Afrique. I'm the Business Development Director here at Shout Afrique, covering 44 member countries, of which Rwanda is one of those 44 member countries. And we're quite active in Rwanda with large-scale projects. So in terms of introducing my panel, allow me to start by introducing Mr. Leopold Oimana. Mr. Leopold Oimana is the Head of Affordable Housing and Planning Development at Rwanda Housing Authority. So welcome, Leopold. And then also allow me to also introduce Mr. Pacific Tuyishime, who is the Acting Chief Investment Officer at Development Bank of Rwanda, BRD, who's also on the line. Welcome, Pacific. And then also allow me to also welcome Mr. Nelson Mandela. Mr. Nelson Mandela, you can remind, I think you're from RDB, but will allow you. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Nelson.
Maybe for point of correction, the speaker from BRD will be Lilian Igihozo. She's trying to join.
Oh.
She's trying to join. She's the Chief Operating Officer.
Yes, I know Lilian.
BRD.
Okay.
And
that's great.
I'm the manager for Rwanda Housing Finance Project.
Okay. All right.
I'm trying hard to join.
All right. Thank you very much. So we'll proceed because we've got people on the session. So Lillian can then join us. But I think what we'll do for expediency, we'll start with Leopold from the Rwanda Housing Authority. Leopold, to kick us off, please just do a quick introduction of yourself and tell us a bit about Rwanda Housing Authority in terms of background. Thank you. Leopold? Leopold, can you hear me? All right. We got a bit of technology issues. I'm sure, Leopold, you'll come back just now. So in terms of moving on, Pacific, I know that Lillian is also meant to join us, but I'm sure you can, you're well enabled as well to talk on behalf of BRD. Maybe in terms of, you can just do a quick introduction of yourself and a quick background on BRD before we get into the session. Thank you.
So, thank you. Just to clarify, the acronym get a bit confusing. So I'm from RDB, the Rwanda Development Board, and then we have our colleagues from the bank, BRD. But so really quickly, just to give you a background on what RDB is and what RDB does. Our RDB is a government institution. You can think of it as a ministry almost, that's in charge of promoting investments into the country. It was created through a merging of several institutions, about 8 of them, almost 10 years ago. And today, one of our key functions include working hard to attract additional investment into the country, coordinating with our sister institutions, sister ministries to fast-track investments into the country. And in short, I think the way we like to say it is to just any work that promotes private sector development that reduces our trade deficit, that's something that RDB tends to be involved in. So the work that we do is quite intertwined with several institutions across government. And it also touches, obviously, on infrastructure, including affordable housing projects. So I'll leave it at that for now, but I'll be able to add more context as we go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Pacific, and apologies there. I was referring to yours as BRD. Yeah, it's actually RDB. Thank you for that correction. Welcome, Lillian. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, morning, everyone. Hope you can also hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
So Lillian
Morning.
is the Chief Operating Officer at BRD, Development Bank of Rwanda. Lillian, maybe you could just do a quick introduction of yourself and tell us very briefly about BRD. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Yanko. Morning, everyone. Leopold, Pacific, Nelson. So yes, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at BRD, but actually transitioning to more of the World Bank project, to head the World Bank project. So the Development Bank of Rwanda is has been around for 52 years, actually. And I would say that we are the twin sister of RDB, but in terms of financing. So we are the financing arm of the government for all the development projects and the strategic projects with socio-economic impact that the country wants to or plans to develop. Housing is one of our priority sector, which aligns actually with the SDG goals. And basically, we are active at two levels. In terms of facilitating at the supply side of housing through loans, lendings, and equity participation products, and also at the demand side, because I will elaborate later on more on that, but we are also hosting a World Bank fund to facilitate access to mortgages for affordable housing. So yes, I think I'll pause it there. And I'm very happy to be part of this panel today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian. Leopold, I'm sure you can hear me now. We had a bit of a technical issue. Leopold represents Rwanda Housing Authority. Leopold, please, if you can, quick introduction of yourself and a quick background on Rwanda Housing Authority. Thank you. Leopold, can you hear us? Got a bit of a challenge, I'm sure. All right. Leopold, can you hear us? One more try before we move. Yeah. All right. Thank you. So thank you for that. And I think what we'll do is maybe start with Pacific while we're waiting for Leopold to connect. Leopold, we can see him, but we can't hear him. I think it was very important to start with Rwanda Housing Authority to also get the background of affordable housing and how they define it. But I'm sure we'll get to that. And I know my astute colleagues, Pacific and Lillian, also know it very well. But just to start off with RDB and Pacific specifically, can you probably just give us, in terms of the interventions that RDB is making in affordable housing, can you maybe talk to that in terms of those interventions? But also, I think more importantly as well, touch on kind of the role that you play in terms of interaction with the private sector, especially as it is with affordable housing. Thank you, Pacific.
Sure, thank you. So maybe the way I'll approach that question, again, RDB works in close partnership with the private sector, but as well as the other government institutions. And our role is more of a coordinator, facilitator. I think it's often said that when it comes to investments, projects in the country that require government involvement, RDB is there to be a facilitator to streamline that process. But going into the concrete interventions that we've done, I think it would be first necessary to talk about what government as a whole has put in place, and then I can talk about RDB's role specifically. So my colleague from BRD just touched on it in terms of the supply support. There is a fund that was put in place that's going to help with the demand, sorry, not the supply angle, with the demand in the future. And then on the supply side, one of the key interventions by the government has been to put in place a Prime Minister's order that outlines the requirements for affordable housing development projects that will benefit from some level of government support. And that support basically typically touches around basic infrastructure provision, so roads, sewage, things of that nature. And so any project that's eligible for that, as defined by the Prime Minister's order, is something that also becomes eligible for that fund that's hosted at BRD in conjunction with other private sector participants in the banking side. And so what RDB has been doing has been to working closely with RHA and MINAFRA to identify sites to look into the whole value chain required for housing and to mobilize investor or private sector participation in that sector. And oftentimes as RDB, we also find that we are one of the many points of contact for investors who are trying to push forward these projects, and they will often require our intervention and our guidance and counseling or connections to overcome some of the challenges inherent to this particular sector. So in short, and maybe if there are specific questions I can go into those, I'd say that RDB's role is as a coordinator in linking our developers with the various government stakeholders, and also in trying to, on the government side, trying to map out what the best strategy might be in trying to tackle this challenging but exciting sector that is affordable housing. So I'll leave it at that, and maybe I can come back to it with a few more specific examples. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Pacific, and very clear and concise. We'll definitely come back on some of these points around you've identified sites. We'll sort of dive into that a bit. But just moving on, Lillian, in terms of, especially when it can't talk about RDB and not talk about BRD, as you said, they're sister institutions, and focus on specific things. In terms of BRD, can you maybe talk a bit more around the relationship with World Bank in terms of the facility that you have on the demand side, and also maybe give us an update in terms of how many loans so far have been dispersed, or let's say approved and dispersed on in terms of that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Yanko. So basically, as Pacific has just mentioned, the government of Rwanda received funding from the World Bank to finance the mortgages. And BRD role is basically, we are basically the implementing agency, which means that we are managing the funds, and we are following up the implementation, and we are basically the ones to disburse. This is an on-lending facility, which means that we don't disburse actually to the end users or the end beneficiaries, but we work through commercial banks. The facility, as you mentioned, has 150 million USD, and part of it is the technical assistance, but a big portion, 126 million, are actually to be extended for long-term mortgages. I would say the specificity of this fund is, first of all, the beneficiaries. they have to be low to middle income beneficiaries. They have to be first-time home owners, and it's also a long-term facility. We provide mortgages up to 20 years, which is something that is uncommon on the local market. And since those funds are concessional, we also extend them at a lower interest rate, which is a maximum of 11% actually for the end users. To date, we have approved the 48 billion Rwandan francs, which is slightly more than 50 million USD credit lines for commercial banks. But I have to confess that we are still in the process of approving the first mortgages, because we've been working on the demand side, but the absorption on the market is not yet ready. We have the first units that have been completed recently, and we are planning to have the first disbursement to beneficiaries by before end of this financial year. Maybe another point that I forgot to highlight is the houses, what we call affordable houses. So what we call affordable houses are houses that are actually costing below 35 million Rwandan francs, which is somewhere around 38,000 USD, in 38 and 40 actually. So the houses that we will be financing will only be below that threshold. I think Leopold has joined, and since they are basically the regulator and our guides in that area, maybe I'll let him also explain a bit more on the framework of affordable housing in Rwanda. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Lilian. Leopold, welcome. I know we had some technology challenges, but I'm glad they've been overcome. You can hear us, I hope.
I hear you.
Great, thank you. So we really wanted to have started with you, because really you are the center of affordable housing in Rwanda, and really but be that as it may, our colleagues Pacific and Lillian have really expressed it well. But maybe what we can do, if you can quickly please introduce yourself to everyone and give us a quick background on what is Rwanda Housing Authority. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Leopold Uwimana. I'm the head of Affordable Housing Department in Rwanda Housing Authority. Briefly, Rwanda Housing Authority is housing regulations. All legal frameworks are engineered by Rwanda Housing Authority and implemented by other institutions and decentralized entities. So Rwanda Housing Authority normally drafts law and implementation orders related to housing. So urbanization policies and urbanization codes, building regulations and building codes are also created by Rwanda Housing Authority and implemented on a large scale by other institutions. So that's what Rwanda Housing Authority in brief does.
Thank you, Leopold. And I would say, I think Rwanda is unique in that Rwanda has defined what affordable housing is. I think this discussion around what is affordable housing and what brackets, that is not a question mark in Rwanda. Can you maybe just elaborate more how affordable housing is defined by RHA?
Well, as you said, when you look at the different areas, affordable housing is defined differently. But here, affordable housing program was put in place to cater for low and middle income community, to facilitate them to access decent houses, which are, I would say, affordable to them. So the first explanation is to define who are we targeting. We are targeting low and middle income communities earning between currently we are targeting people earning between $200 to around $1,000, but the scale we keep changing depending on the dynamics in supply and demand. The houses that we consider to be affordable here in Rwanda, they are houses which with the floor area not exceeding 95 square meters. They can be 1 to 3 bedroom arranged in apartments or attached houses. So these houses cost, as Lillian said, cost at maximum 35 million Rwandan francs, approximately 40,000 USD. The lower limit is not fixed because we keep touching those people earning less, because if you look at the pyramid of income, people on the bottom, at the bottom are very, very many. So we keep searching different methods of construction to reach those people. But as the program is still young, we started with that bracket that I said, between $200 and almost $1,000 per month per household. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Leopold. And it's really great to see that the parameters are very clear. And as you put it, that even as they move, it's very clear on the basis at which they would move. And now, in terms of, and now I'm going to go to Pacific. I think you touched on a very interesting point to say that you've identified sites. Maybe you could elaborate to say, are these sites that are a mixture of private land and public land? And in terms of what you've identified, what do you see being rolled out in the next 2 to 3 years as it relates to those particular projects? And I would imagine some of them are longer term, but I think I'm trying to focus more on the next 2 to 3 years.
Thank you. Actually, it's a question where I think even Leopold from RHA will also be able to chip in. What government has done, mostly through RHA and through MINAFMA, is to look at, obviously we understand the need for affordable housing. It's quite clear it's a critical need at the moment. And so we've tried to map out the sites within the city that we think will be a suitable area for that. Now, at the moment, the majority of those sites have people on them and would require some level of expropriation. But in line with the various master plans that we have, what we try to do is to sort of outline certain key areas that we think would be a good fit for those projects. But that's still, I think a few of them are currently fully owned by government and have been sort of figured out. I think Leopold could touch on those. But several others, we have an idea of where we'd want them to be. What would, in terms of impact on the local population and what makes sense in terms of resettling people. That's an exercise that we've conducted. So in Kigali, for example, our team, and when I say our team, I mean government collectively, not just RDB, is looking at 11 potential sites. But this is at a very preliminary, I'd say, stage. And then there's obviously other areas within Kigali at the moment that have ongoing projects, maybe about 4 or so. But I think as Lillian put it, we are at the early stages of really rolling this out. And one of the key things, and this is where RDB participation focuses on, is what is it going to take to unlock I'd say, all the pieces to be able to put this together, from the importation of materials, the local production of materials, the design, the technology, the market. All of those are things that we need to map out clearly to be able to make a sort of a holistic case to any investor that we approach in order to get into that space. So that's the coordination, and that's where our intervention as RDB goes into, to try to bring all these things together. But in terms of site identification, that's an exercise that we've already carried out. Now, for preparation and clearing that's going to be ongoing, and it's going to, I think, to be done on a sort of first come, first serve basis, and depending on kind of what makes sense for that particular investor. So,
thank you for that. Well, thanks, Pacific. Leopold, do you want to just add on that? And I think there's already a lot of good questions coming on the chat group, which I'll start also asking. Please just add maybe on what Pacific has just spoken about.
Yeah, as Pacific said, currently there are different sites for affordable housing, but what the government does in these last days was to update the master plans of the cities. So within those master plans, there are large areas reserved for affordable housing because we have a policy of densification. You know, our country is such big. Densification is a priority for the government to house many people. So, for example, the city of Kigali, where the master plan was concluded, we have around 61 square kilometers where affordable housing can be developed. It doesn't mean that this is a free land. There are many people occupying those sites, but with the participation method, those people can be approached by the government together with the private developers and try to upgrade the areas where those people are living. So they can also participate or be settled in those sites. But it's clear that we have we have a good approach to develop affordable homes within the cities. The idea is not to put new houses in the outskirts of the cities. The idea is to make sure that all areas are developed according to the master plans. So including affordable homes, which targets people in the working class and within the income bracket that I said before.
Thank you for that. Lillian, over to you. In terms of, I think the World Bank facility that you are managing has sparked up a lot of interest, a lot of the questions coming on the group around that. But I think more importantly, I think there was a question that was asked around currency. Say, are the mortgages offered in local currency? And if they are, how is the foreign exchange hedged? Because obviously the facility itself is in dollars, but obviously the underlying loans are potentially being created in local currency. Can you please address that, please?
Yes, thank you, Yanko. So yes, this is basically the facilities for Rwandans, and it is basically to be paid by Rwandans. If we denominate it in dollars over 20 years, you can imagine the impact it can have on the household's revenues. So this is to explain that, yes, it is in Rwandan francs. We actually extend Rwandan francs to the commercial banks, and they extend the Rwandan francs to the beneficiaries. So in terms of FX risk, actually it's taken over it's taken over by the government, because as I mentioned, we are an implementing agency, but the credit line and the agreements, the financing agreement has actually been negotiated with the government of Rwanda. So it's a facility initially extended to the government, and if we can call it the swap arrangement or the FX risk is borne by the government of Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you. Lillian, before I move from you, I think the question would be, it's clear then that that facility is really taking care of the demand side. And it's very encouraging to hear that you've approved $50 million equivalent so far and counting. The question would be in terms of on the supply side, how does BRD unlock the supply side? Because you've now got RDB coordinating, there's 11 sites, and so forth. But what interventions on the financing side does BRD have when it comes to supply?
So in terms of supply, we are actually intervening at different levels. I would say the first one, and the most obvious one, we are a bank. So we provide financing, and we provide loans to small scale to medium scale developers. That's the first, I would say, the first arm that we are using. The next one is we are developing some of the plots. I think some of those that Leopold and Pacific mentioned are actually developed in partnership with BRD. And I think to date, the advanced one, which is called Rugarama, is developed by on the plot belonging to BRD and South Africa, actually, where we are both partnering. So we basically provide equity participation, and mainly in terms of land assets. This is the number 2. The number 3, which is under final stage of negotiation, so I trust I can mention it here, is we are negotiating actually with the World Bank to participate in the infrastructure subsidy for the developers. So we want to redirect part of the fund that was planned to cater for the demand side. We want to redirect it to basically support the offer side in terms of infrastructure subsidies, so that we can also support or speed up also at that level. So I would say yes, in terms of the supply side, those are the 3 interventions that we are having as BRD at the moment. And of course, there are other more soft interventions in terms of lobbying, marketing. Before COVID, we had many international events where we'd also go and promote the affordable housing development in Rwanda. So we have also, in terms of the marketing side, we are also participating along with RHA and RDB.
Thank you, Lillian. Leopold, some good questions, as I mentioned already, coming through on the chat group. One that's coming up quite commonly from a couple of people who are putting in on the chat is around how about people who earn under $200 a month? How are those people being serviced in terms of housing in Rwanda? Can you please address that one?
That's a question. 200,000 per household is a good money when you look at the salary scale here in Rwanda. So with $200 per month, it's possible to acquire a simple house in incremental process. For example, if a house can be designed to be sold at less than 10 million francs, it's about less than $10,000 US dollars, and one is paying about 50% of his or her income, it's possible to achieve such kind of houses, and people are able to access those houses. So the question is minimizing the construction costs. That's where things of affordability come. So we are trying as much as we can to make building typologies which can cost less, but with the policy of incrementalization, so where people can construct over the years. So there is a possibility of accessing cheap house for those people who are on the lower limit. Thank you.
Thank you. That's actually great. So just to make sure it's understood there. So we're saying there's flexibility that you create by obviously bringing in alternative technology, which allows costs to come down, but also there's an element of incremental housing, which allows for people to create the housing, or the housing to be created over time. So does that mean that the service stands, as an example, that are on offer? I know there's also kind of the balance with densification. So how do you deal with that, where really you're trying to achieve densification, but you also want to try and at least allow for incremental housing to take place?
Densification. For example, we have a maximum density of 70 units per hectare. So that's what we have at this moment, but it will be increasing for the next couple of years. But looking at this densification example that I'm talking about, it's possible to have some attached houses, so which can be constructed in phases. So if one brings a house at a very low cost, that means there are some parts of the house which are not yet provided. But the beneficiary can access houses at a very, very minimum cost. And over the years, he or she can complete the houses in different phases. So that's one of the solutions that very low income or extremely low income people can access houses on ownership tenures. But we are also thinking of having a good rental housing scheme. That scheme will cater for extremely low income and some other people who prefer to rent rather than buying houses. So it's a process that we continue because, affordable housing scheme is not such old here. It was created around 2015, and it started with some minor things such as a legal framework, but you can hear now we have a financing scheme which is also rolling. So people started registering low cheap mortgages. So so it's a process which will grow, and the government and some other institutions involved in the program are committed to have this program running successfully. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. To Pacific, a question is coming up on the chat, and I see you've also responded. That's great. But maybe for the larger audience, for people who are sitting out there who are either private developers or private funders, is it correct to say that the avenue to take to then be able to engage the stakeholders that are involved from BRD to RHA would be through yourselves as RDB? Can you please then respond?
Yes, correct. So that's why we exist, to be, I'd say, the entry point for investors, both coming from outside the country and in the country, to be able to provide that coordination, those linkages that are critical for getting projects like this off the ground. One of the reasons why I say that is because we found, in our experience, it's been that people who want to get into this business have multi-pronged solutions that often include an element of construction material development, some sort of technology innovation. So it's not just, a pure developer who procures all his materials, both locally or internationally. It's somebody who's also involved in manufacturing those materials. And so when you get into that, there's also an element of training and skills development. And you find that, and then also, in addition, there's also a volume of scale, right? People interested in doing this are typically targeting thousands of houses per year, or at least several hundreds of houses per year. And due to all of that, as you find that, they also need the support, somebody who can sit back and sort of help them see if their plan corresponds with the realities on the ground. And that's where we can bring in RHA, BRD, and all other types of partners as needed to try to sort of make sure that the proposed solution matches what can actually be accomplished on the ground.
Thank you for that. And in terms of like turnaround times, and I know Rwanda generally always has great turnaround times. Is there like a general rule of thumb in terms of if there's an inquiry, kind of how quick that is responded on?
You mean for the proposals or for the actual development? For the proposal. No, we try to be very responsive. So if you reach out to us today, we'll try to get back to you. You get your response, or at least initiate a conversation within a few days, at most. Yes.
Great. Thanks for that, Pacific. Lillian, the matter of interest rates is coming up quite a bit, and I know you touched on it, but maybe obviously some people have joined late. I know you mentioned around 11% being the cap, really, but I guess the question that is being asked is, for these low-income workers, low-income earners, let's say people earn $200 a month, does the same apply? So maybe you can just talk a bit around that interest rate and that range and the cap, and just to give people some more understanding around it.
Thank you, Yanko. So yes, in terms of interest rate, 11% apply throughout all the beneficiaries. This is the maximum cap. So now it's up to the commercial banks also to pay with the competition, because basically we extend the loans at 6.5% to the commercial banks, so they have that spread to play within. So 11%, depending on which part of the globe we are, might seem quite a lot or quite little, but actually on the local market, usually those mortgages would be extended at somewhere around between 18 and 21%, which means that 11% is really, really a very good rate, actually, put up on the market. Yeah. So I think that would be my comment.
No, I think you've. I think Leopold just dropped off, but I'm also aware of time. But there was a question, Lillian, before I let you go there, that was quite a valid one, to say, is there room for SACCOs to participate in accessing the World Bank funding that's available? So maybe you can address that before we move back to Pacific.
Yes.
For his last question.
Thank you. So definitely SACCOs can participate. However, now we have more focused on commercial banks for the launch. But SACCOs, if they comply with all the I would say the eligibility criteria of a financial institution to benefit from the facility could also apply. Because we use also some prudential measures or limits set by the central bank. So if they comply, basically they could access it as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you there, Lillian. Pacific, from one last question to you, and then maybe what I'll do is also allow for any other matters that you wanted maybe to share with everyone else around what RDB is doing, that maybe haven't really been sort of asked in the questions. But I think the question is, the last question from what I've seen from the panel, is to say that it's the 2015 is kind of when all this started, and it's taken this long to get here, and it shows kind of the level of planning and effort that has to go into. First of all, you have a framework, but then, as you were saying, now as a coordinator, you've been coordinating with the different agencies and the private sector. What would you say in terms of the technologies that are out there so far that you've seen are really making sense in terms of affordable housing? Because obviously I'd imagine you get a lot of proposals coming through from alternative building contractors or providers. But what would you say that you've started seeing, obviously without mentioning the actual provider, but the actual technologies that you're seeing that are really quite applicable to affordable housing at the moment?
So I'd answer the question this way. I think in the sort of the last several months, proposals have come in around light steel construction, and others with suggestions around how to make cheaper types of bricks. But you find that with affordable housing, it's a journey for RDB and for the government as well. We are open to all ideas, and we keep learning about new technologies, about new ways of doing things, about new ways for the developer to be efficient and to meet those price points at which you're now eligible for the BRD mortgage support scheme, for which you're eligible for the government basic infrastructure support. So you find our developers are really trying everything to stay within those definitions, that range of up to 35 million francs, which is about $37,000, and to essentially construct houses that are attractive to people within that income bracket that Leopold talked about earlier. So the technology does vary, but we are at a very early stage, I'd say, of this affordable housing journey. We've already put certain things in place, but my suspicion is that we're going to continue to have to do more, to be a bit more creative, and that's from the government's perspective, but also from the private sector perspective, to be able to find the right combination, the right mix of things, the right arrangement that results into a commercially viable affordable housing project or program, if you will. So as far as technology goes, we had the members of our team who keep seeing the various proposals come in. I'd say the most recent one that I think seems to be the way the industry is going is a mixture of light steel construction and sort of local manufacturing of certain inputs, including bricks and so on, and using different types of cement, things along those lines. But we don't come in as the experts, because if we had the solution, we probably would have done it a long time ago. But we try to be as responsive and as accommodating as possible, and we're willing to try various things across various projects, because the people that approach us don't all have the same solution. They have different proposals and different ways of seeing this. So as we move forward and we have more of these development projects go online, I think we'll start getting a better sense of what's actually the most viable in the long term.
Thank you, Pacific. And any other further closing remarks from your end before I move to the other participants?
The one thing I would add, when we talk about affordable housing in Rwanda, these are projects that we expect to be commercially viable as a government. There's some level of support that we are ready to provide and some level of facilitation. But we hope at the end of the day that these are housing projects that will now require an additional level of subsidy from the government. Now we understand that can only include a certain segment of the population. There's initiatives around what we call social housing, which is the segment of the population that's below that makes less than 200,000 and that may not qualify for a mortgage from a bank, for example. So those are also things that we're working on, where we expect to have a lot more participation from the government. But for what we're defining as affordable housing right now, I'm personally excited to see how it shakes out in 2 to 3 years. And I think even in terms of involving the financial markets, in terms of the various vehicles that could be put in place to make both the demand and the supply, to strengthen both of those parts of the value chain, I think we're only beginning to scratch the surface on a technology level, on a structuring level, and also in terms of creativity of the solutions that we could look into. So I hope to see more and more proposals coming into RDB or via RHA or via BRD, and then we'll work with everybody who comes on board to see how we can finally piece together the best way to really provide all these houses that are urgently needed, and that the country, several millions of people in the country, I think, will depend on. And also, I think it represents an untapped segment of the economy. So the minute we can figure it out, I expect this to be something that will be working at a significant scale. And so I'm happy to be part of a panel like this. And I can tell from the questions that we have in the chat that there's several people who've thought about this probably in more depth than even I have. And so we welcome those solutions and those proposals, and we look forward to working with everybody in this space, and Shelter Freak and all the others as well that have put this together. So that'll be my last point.
Thank you. Leopold, just from your side, any further matters that in closing, you wanted to just highlight that maybe haven't been addressed in terms of the questions that have been asked?
I think have been answered, but what I can add is that affordable housing demand is so enormous. So looking at the demand that we have here in Rwanda, so it's a huge opportunity for the private sector, which is a key player in supplying of those houses. So looking at the good investment environment that we have here in Rwanda, so the private investors can continue flock to construct those houses, because the government is keen to support any investor, whoever national or international developers. So, by the way, the international developers are the key players here in providing affordable homes. So we have so many of them, and thanks to RDB for that effort. So they did a tremendous job. So, but it's something that we should continue to interest people, to interest whether local or international developers, but the demand is so huge. The demand is so huge. So they can continue investing in housing here in Rwanda. So the government and some other partners are ready to facilitate. So maybe that's what I can add. So, to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leopold. And obviously, Lillian, I think it's very exciting, as we mentioned, that of the 150, we've already approved 50. I would say, when do you see yourselves using up that money, and what next? And then I would say that then if we can have your closing remarks as well.
Thank you, Yanko. Indeed, it's quite exciting to see uptake and the uptake from the private institutions, which means that actually the financial market is ready to embrace the move, is ready to those long-term financing mortgages. And yes, I would say the project is to run up to 2024 as it is currently, but actually the longer plan is to create an RMRC, which a mortgage refinancing company, actually, with equity participation from different institutions, private financing institutions, but maybe any other international DFI or interested partner. So we are really looking at a longer run. We are looking at having revolving funds, so that when the mortgages are paid back, the funds can be rolled out and be used for other beneficiaries. And we are also, of course, looking at growing up the fund. I think what we are doing here is really a catalytic movement towards the financing of the affordable housing, but we look forward growing it going forward. Yes. So my final note would just be to thank you all, to the organizers, to Yanko, to the participants, and also to the audience. I've seen we have many interesting questions around. Unfortunately, time did not allow to touch on all of them. But as BRD, we are very happy to get engaged on the side note. We have our website where you can get our contact. It's brd.rw, or you can even send an email at brd on brd@brd.rw, and we'd be happy to engage and provide more answers to all the interested developers. So basically, the demand is there. We are there to facilitate, and we welcome any developer who is interested to partner on developing these challenging but quite exciting market in Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to hand over to Olivia, but I would be amiss to. I want to really thank Pacific. I want to thank Leopold and Lillian for your great contribution as panelists on this, and it was a pleasure to really engage with you. And again, I also appreciate all the people who've been joining us.
Thank you so much, Yanko. Thank you so much to the panelists. It was really a very interesting panel, and thank you so much for taking the time to answer all those questions. Thank you to the participants for submitting your question. We, like Lilian mentioned, there's always a possibility to keep this conversation online or offline through the networking session, to the networking panel on your left side. You will now, if you go back to the session, tablet, you will have the option between the two panels. One, the one on the niche market opportunities in Kenya affordable housing sector is running 15 minutes late, so it will start in 15 minutes if you're interested in this one. Otherwise, if you want to listen to the presentation on housing at the center, accelerating the SDG with the iBuild platform, it will start now. So thank you all, and I'll see you just in a minute in another session. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.